Okay, we're going right into the future, the year 2207. And it's one of these questions that it's similar to the one we had a couple of slides ago, where you were given, in the previous one, we were given an exponential equation and asked to give x in terms of y. This time it's a log. So are we going to use our calculator? Well, what happens when we use our calculator? Yeah, we don't get an answer that matches up. So once again, if you've got a log or an exponential and you have to do the inverse and get the rule, it's easier to do those ones by hand. Okay, so once again, this sort of question should be automatic. If you are rearranging, you're going to take, you've got a B? Yeah. You're going to take the 3 to the other side and then convert it to an exponential. So a to the y minus 3 equals 7x minus b. And hopefully you can see that the correct response is, which one? C. Okay. Yes? Look, if anyone can find a way to do it on their calculator, I'd like to know. I've tried to do it on my calculator and I couldn't get it to give me the answer the way I wanted it to be. So I tried a few different things and couldn't get it to do it. And I found that when you're solving for x and y with a log or an exponential, the calculator doesn't really do it the way you want it to do. So with those, it's probably quicker, instead of wasting time trying on the calculator, because it's easy to do, it's quicker to do it by hand. Okay, so remember, with multiple choice questions, even though they're on the tech active paper, it doesn't mean you have to use your calculator for every single question, but usually you do. Okay, the solution set. What is this asking us to do? It's not immediately evident. It hasn't spelt it out what we need to do. What are you going to do? Okay, you're going to solve for x, and you may not realise that what you need to do is you need to solve for when that equals 0. So that's a really easy one when you put it into calculator. It spits out the correct response, which is E. But if you didn't realise what you had to do, it doesn't matter how easy it is to type it in, if you don't realise what to do, you're not going to be able to get the mark. So you have to be able to read the instructions, read the question, and understand what is actually expected of you. So that was a fairly straightforward question. About 82% of people got that one right. Another maximal domain, you see that VCAA really like these questions where they talk about the maximal domain. So how are we going to do this question? If you've got a calculator, sketch the function, and once again you need to recognise that we have an asymptote here when x equals 3, so the maximal domain, it's a fairly straightforward one, it's going to be, so the correct response is A, and 72% of people got that right. Go on to Sana. Yeah? Okay, this is something interesting about the calculator, and I'm going off to a PD next Wednesday, and that's my exact question. Why doesn't the Lines bar sketch the asymptotes for you? Why does it make your job so much harder? For some reason, it makes it look like the graph just sort of ends. So often, if it's a logarithmic function, you might mistake it for a square root function. So you really can't just look at the graph alone. You have to look at the equation. That's why we spend so much time looking at the equation and saying, okay, what's the basic graph? What are all the transformations? You need to show your understanding. Being good at the calculator isn't enough. You have to have that deeper understanding. It's interesting with this one, the most common responses were A and B, and you can see it's because a lot of kids would not have realised that that was an asymptote, so they would have said that maximal domain was a set of real numbers. The other thing people would have failed to do would be, a lot of people would just ignore the modulus sign, and if you ignore the modulus sign, you only get half the graph, and that's why people would have said the domain is from 3 to infinity, not including 3. Right, we are looking bored, Shahana. I'll move quickly. Okay. All right, you may not have realised there were two separate questions here. I should have separated them. The first one is from exam 1, so I'll tackle that one in a minute. We'll look at the multiple choice question first, which is from 2009. Once again, a maximum domain question. This time it's easier in the sense that there's no absolute value, but if you tried to do it by hand, you would need to remember that you need to factorise that bracket. If you don't want to do that, go straight to your calculator, punch it in, and you can see that there is an asymptote just to the left of the y-axis, and you almost do need to really factorise the 2x plus 1 to realise that the asymptote is at x equals negative a half, and that gives you the domain of, which one is it? B. 86% of people got that right. Let's wrap this up with that final question, the exam 1 question, solving that logarithmic equation. Okay, so I'm just going to have to, I've got a clean page so I can write it down. Okay, so the first thing that sort of stands out that's in the way is that 2, so we're going to use our log laws to put it to the power. And you can do this in fewer steps if you feel confident. So we recognise that if the bases are the same and we are subtracting, we can divide in this instance. Now, I've noticed moving around the room that a lot of people have a burning desire in this case to move the log of a half to the left and let it equal 0. You can do that, but there's no need, because if you look at that, if you've got log of something equals log of something, well then the somethings must be equal to each other. So therefore, x squared and x plus 3 equals a half. And of course we need to deal with denominators, so it becomes 2x squared equals x plus 3, and now you can satisfy that urge to move everything to one side, let it equal 0, because it's a quadratic. So 2x squared minus x minus 3 equals 0. Hopefully you can factorise that without too much trouble. What have we got? 3 and 1, and that's a minus and that's a plus. Just make sure I haven't made any mistakes. So therefore x equals 3 and 2, and x equals negative 1. Now, when we solve a logarithm or an exponential, we always have to check the feasibility of our solution. So we recognise that x cannot be equal to negative 1, so you have to finish off by making your selection. So show all the possible answers and then make your selection. So the answer is that x equals 3 on 2, and give a reason for why you've rejected the negative 1. We've rejected it because x has to be positive. Now this question was on exam 1. It was worth 4 marks, which is 4 marks out of 40, so it's a big question. It's worth a lot. So where would the marks have been allocated? I'm just sort of guessing at this point because I didn't mark, but I'd say you'd get a mark for getting somewhere there, and then you'd get a mark for getting perhaps down to this point and realising that you had a quadratic that you needed to factorise and solve. You'd get a mark for showing both of the solutions, and the final mark for making a selection and giving a good, valid reason for why you've made that choice. So how did people fare? Okay, only 22% got 4 marks, 26% got 3, 20% got 2, and then heaps of people had absolutely no idea what they were doing and got none or 1 mark. Okay, so that's 10 quick VCAA questions, which hopefully give you a bit of confidence. How do I finish off? Do I just stop?